Hello, 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 guys. Welcome to this new edition of Mind Podcast. This is Aadit Kapadia coming to you after, I think, a 9-10 day break. So, pardon me on my sort of lax attitude. Blame it on the Memorial Day weekend on this side of the if on this side of the Atlantic, and a little bit of sort of disconnect with the news that week. Although we are not completely disconnected with the news, and what a newsy week this has been. So, to help me declutter the news, to help me, go into details of them, is Mind Podcast returning champion. I told Mohal last week I'm going to call you guys as returning champions now. Columnist and the host of India Rising podcast, co-host of India Rising podcast, Kishor Narayan. Hey, Kishor, how are you?
I'm good, Adit. How are you?
Fantastic. What a week. So it's funny. We did one podcast with Mohal on Israel Palestine, and I didn't know we would be doing the second podcast. Both of us would be doing it on Israel because they've had a leadership change. BB or Benjamin Netanyahu is no longer the Prime Minister of Israel. Is after 12 years, I think,
hmm
in power. And I mean, I don't even know. They had what, 4 elections in the last 4 years?
Last 2 years.
Last 2 years, I'm sorry. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah. Back to back.
yeah, back to back, and this is during COVID and everything, and going on. So it was completely crazy. In between, they had a whole thing going on. I mean, technically, okay, I have to put in a caveat. Netanyahu is still the prime minister of
He's
Israel.
still the, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but the soon-to-be prime minister is Yair Lapid, and
Naftali Benett.
I'm sorry, Naftali Benett. Oh my goodness, what am I doing? Naftali Benett. And
I mean, you were right. You were right.
yeah.
Yair Lapid will be soon to be prime minister a little later.
But for now, it's Naftali Benett.
Yeah.
Yes. So that's what the situation is in Israel right now. It's a fascinating sort of thing. Very tumultuous last few years with the warlike situation in Palestine happening in the last few months. The
hmm
political instability. Netanyahu, obviously a very strong leader, very popular still on an individual basis amongst the Israeli population. Clearly, he kept getting elected with at least 30% or more of the vote. So a very significant part of Israel and his coalition got, I think, around
hmm
40%, maybe even more than that of the votes. So clearly a significant part of Israel. Like, he had very strong relations with world leaders throughout, and interestingly, since 2009, he shared both a very interesting relationship with America, even post Trump. With Biden, I don't think there was any issues per se with them, and with India as well and other countries. So, sort of a change in guard in Israel. 12 years is a long time in global politics. A lot has happened since. Governments have swung from left to right, to center to left to right. What do you make of this, Kishore? What will this? How will this shape world politics, and how will this shape the Israel-Palestine debate?
Okay. A quick summary. Benjamin Netanyahu has been the prime minister unchanged for 12 years now. And prior to that, he was prime minister for one extra term before that.
Yeah.
So 12 years again is a long, long time. Right-wing prime minister, the most popular leader in Israel even today. So yeah, quite a watershed moment, so to speak. But then Bibi, as everybody wants to call him, was very, very focused on national security,
Mm.
making sure that he manages the Palestine issue and not go overboard trying to find a solution. He just wanted to manage it, stage manage it, ensure that there is no major trouble. So
Mm.
that way, I think he kept playing all his cards to his strength. Now, again, in 12 years, a lot of things change. There was this BDS movement where globally there was some kind of a apartheid sticker being put on Israel by the global leftist organizations, all movements. So I think that way Bibi kept defending Israel in all global fora, in international summits, wherever he went. He kept making new friends. Modi again is one popular example. He also ensured that He establishes proper diplomatic, full-fledged relations with China. So I think that way he was a leader par excellence for Israel. But then not everything is about national security. Israel has been struggling with unemployment, inflation, so on and so forth. So I think that way people were kind of getting fed up with the monotony. And of course, along with it, there was this corruption charges that were filed against him
Mm,
of, I mean, two or three separate charges. One was his wife taking up, or rather having lavish spending,
mm,
trying to bring in a five-star chef to cook for her, things like that. Again, all these things don't go very well when you are in a public position. So I
mm,
think that way, all these things slowly kept adding one on top of the other. Eventually, in the past four elections, back-to-back elections, Bibi kept retaining his vote percentage, not a major downslide,
mm,
maybe around 1 or 2% here and there,
mm,
but in a kind of a single constituency parliamentary system that Israel has,
mm,
where everybody fights for the same
mm,
constituency. So that way, I think eventually it was bound to happen that the combination of forces, or the people who are against him, both outside the party and inside, would
mm.
eventually gang up against him and try to overthrow him. So I think that was
Absolutely.
bound to
So,
happen, and that's what we are seeing
the,
right
the
now.
reason the reason I'm pausing you right here is it's very interesting of what ended up overthrowing him. Right, it's a coalition of 8 parties, one from the left, one from the right. Naftali Bennett, of course, belongs to the right side of the political spectrum. Business Insider has a very interesting profile
Okay.
on Naftali Bennett. The title of which I'm going to tell you is Naftali Bennett, the tech millionaire son of Berkeley left wingers, is poised to take over from Benjamin Netanyahu.
Right. Actually,
The
yeah.
son of two Berkeley left wingers. Sorry, go on, Kishore. Yes.
Yeah, he actually sold his well-to-do company,
Huh.
tech company,
Yeah.
and he entered politics. And when he entered politics, I think it was in 2012 or 13, if I'm not wrong, he actually had some kind of a brother's pact with Yair Lapid, the same person with whom he's tying up right now. I
Yeah.
mean, eventually they kind of drifted apart. Yair Lapid was more a centrist slash leftist kind of a person.
Yeah.
Bennett was more an ultra right winger. So I think they drifted apart, but somehow now
Yeah.
getting rid of BB was a common cause for them to come back. So the brothers are back.
Absolutely. Also, I think he was BB's chief of staff, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
That's probably what it is. And his parents actually were, are American, but they do live in Haifa. And
Okay.
I'm again quoting from the same Business Insider profile, where his mother told Haaretz that they were left wingers from Berkeley, until they settled in Israel and embraced nationalism. So it's a very fascinating. I think they said this in 2013 or something like that, and
Hmm.
it's a very, very, very interesting sort of perspective here with what is going on now. Interestingly, while we are recording the podcast, Kishor's colleague on India Rising, Mohal Joshi, has decided to finally honor us with his appearance. Mohal was supposed to come into the podcast, but we were not sure if he was going to make it or not earlier. But now he can make it. So joining us is Mohal Joshi. Hi, Mohal.
Hi,
Welcome.
guys.
This must be the first time ever. I think we are having you on two podcasts in a row. So,
Uh-huh.
but technically, we are talking about Israel 2 weeks in a row also. So,
Yeah.
I have justified.
Hope I didn't miss a lot of the action up till until so far.
No, I mean, well, so before I come to you, Mohal, Kishore was trying to make in a point. So let me go to Kishore first, and then I'll
Hmm.
come to you, Mohal. Kishore, go for it.
Yeah, a quick point I was trying to make was that if you look at the Israeli map, I mean, almost everybody would have looked at an Israeli map,
Hmm.
but all the coastal towns vote far more centrist or leftist.
Hmm.
So Haifa, Tel Aviv, Jaffa, all these cities they vote leftist,
Hmm.
and Jerusalem is primarily voting for the right wing parties simply
Hmm.
because of the demographic composition. So that way, parents from Haifa for Naftali Bennett and they being extremely left wing does not surprise me at all. Just that Naftali Bennett chose to have an extremely rightist kind of a path, political path for himself. Yeah.
Absolutely. So let me go to Mohal. Mohal, what is your perspective? We were essentially just telling everyone, what is going on and everything. And I was telling about this Business Insider profile that I read about Naftali Bennett, where essentially, his parents were being described and how he came to go from a very sort of a left-wing Berkeley household where his parents were, and then they became sort of on the right as when they moved to Israel. And I mean, obviously he served as soldier and everything, and there's a lot of controversial things as well, a lot of interesting things that are being said. So I mean, I leave people to judge on that, and read about him and form your opinions. We are just here to analyze what this means politically for Israel. What is your take on this, Mohal? And also, before I let you come in, there is another thing. Naftali Bennett will be under this thing. Naftali Bennett will be the prime minister for 2 years, and then Yair Lapid will be for another 2 years. So this is not some 5-year stability also we're talking about. This is that Kishor is familiar with this Kumaraswamy Yediyurappa deal that happened in 2007 in Karnataka, which Kumaraswamy forgot in 1.5 years, and then Yediyurappa got a much longer term, and now Kumaraswamy is nowhere.
I mean, everybody forgets conveniently the half term. I think even didn't BSP and SP had a similar arrangement in Uttar Pradesh. I mean, it's nothing new to Indian
not
politics.
just BSP, SP, even BJP and BSP.
Yeah, BJP and BSP. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like,
tries to, no one has ever done it successfully.
Yeah, I mean, very rarely even in Indian political history has this worked out well. I mean, the guy who gets the first turn usually refuses to vacate the seat. So, I mean, this might be new to Israel. I'm not sure. Like Kishor might know. Like if there are any other such instances, I'm pretty sure not. But yeah, I mean, let's see how this political experiment will work. The one big factor is that Bibi is no longer in power. Like I think he was the longest serving Israeli prime minister. So it'll be interesting to see how this works. I mean, as you everybody knows that the coalition is a hodgepodge of like everybody on the left, the right, and the middle. I mean, I was just joking to somebody that this government exists. Imagine if you had like BJP, CPIM, and AIM, I am like together in India. Like that's such a hodgepodge. I don't know how this coalition lasts 4 years.
No, actually, I beg to differ here. It's not a BJP CPM unity government. It's more a Shiva Sena, NCP, Congress, CPM government just to keep the BJP out. I think that would be a perfect summary.
Oh yeah, that's true.
But here is the thing. No, here is the thing. Even that government or part of it works is because there is one person who is really and not NCP chief minister. Although Ajit Pawar may not like working with Uddhav Thackeray, right? Ultimately this is never work. I mean, I have never seen it working where koi prime minister 2 saal banta hai. I think Shekhar Gupta had a very funny term to say prime minister on daily wages or something when he talked about Deve Gowda and IK Gujral. Or Chandan Mitra used to say that if IK Gujral with nobody but himself in his party could become the prime minister, then anyone can become the prime minister. But
yeah, I mean, it's like interesting. We'll see how this works. I mean, the other angle is that with the increase of Israeli and Iranian tensions are not going to go away. So how Naftali Bennett tries to work out with Joe Biden is also going to be an interesting geopolitical play, because I know the far left in US, they want them to moderate on Israel, but I don't think Biden is just pursuing his centrist policy. So Bibi, I mean, he had good clout in Washington DC, and he knew how to work the Capitol Hill on a variety of issues. So now the challenge will be that can the new prime minister, I mean, whether it's like Lapid at the back or Naftali in the front, can they work DC in the same way to make sure that US doesn't drift away to more centrist policies? So that will be the interesting part, especially as there has been a less antagonistic view of Iran in the new administration versus the previous one. So it will be like a lot of fascinating interplays in the days.
Also, I think that is going to be interesting. So Obama had advisors like Ben Rhodes and everything, whose positions on Israel, Iran, are well known. Biden may have such advisors or something, but whether Biden listens to them the same way Obama did or not, I'm not so sure.
No, I
Right?
mean, so on like I think even on the previous Mind Makers podcast and even on our latest India Rising podcast with Kishor, I did mention that interestingly, Biden. I mean, a lot of people had feared that it would be a we would go back to the days of Obama administration, but it's been an interesting mix of keeping some Trump policies while also pursuing certain Obama policies. So he's like charting his own course right in the middle. Like it's neither Trump uh like hard policy and nor Obama type soft policy. So it will be
Also,
interesting.
very interestingly, what is happening is the Democrats are not happy because a lot of centrist Democrats or sort of right-leaning Democrats are not going there. Today, this morning, that guy, the Democratic senator from West Virginia, refused to back the voting and end the filibuster thing. So there was a Twitter trend saying he is a Republican or something like that. The fact is, a Democrat can actually. West Virginia is a state that I think Trump carried by 39 points or something like that.
Yeah,
And
30
this
plus.
yeah, this dude still managed to win a seat on a Democratic ticket in West Virginia. So if the Democrats actually run a primary this guy and make sure that if he is not elected, I can guarantee you the Republicans are going to keep the seat eternally, and the Democrats are not going to have a chance.
I mean, speaking of like Joe Manchin, the West Virginia senator, I think these
Joe
are all
Manchin, I forgot his name. Yeah,
uh,
right.
establishment Democrats. The moment he refuses, I mean, doesn't run in the future, is going to be a Republican seat for a well in time. I think there's also the John Tester from Montana guy. So
Hmm.
these are like legacy Democrats. They get votes because of their image over the years. The moment any other Democrat, be it runs, he's toast in West Virginia. So I mean, he's trying to keep this centrist position. I
Hmm.
mean, just like Susan Collins from Maine or Lisa Murkowski from Alaska, they
Alaska.
try to keep that centrist position because that's how their constituency is, right? I mean,
No,
you
but
don't.
that's what I'm saying. For the first time in a long, long time, they have a president who actually agrees with them, because Joe Biden is reasonably centrist in his positions over the years.
Yeah, yeah.
Now he's surrounded by a bunch of lefties and stuff but they are actually more angrier at Joe Biden than probably the right would be,
I
because
mean, that is bound to happen. I mean, because they don't get their agenda. But Biden also, if you see like a lot of the stuff, like if you like see stimulus or a lot of the agenda, like he's scaling back. He said, okay, I'll negotiate a little bit with Republicans because they have wafer thin majorities, and with the midterms, they could lose it in the House also, right? So they have. I mean, Biden has to pursue a centrist policy. Anyways, his nature or of his policies, if you see during the campaign, also was more centrist than let's say Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren.
yeah. I mean, I always joke that the America's best governance is done by a centrist slash conservative person from the California or the Northeast, or a Democrat from the Southern. It's when the conservative Southerner and a very liberal Northeast or a California one comes. That's when the shit hits the fan,
I mean,
right?
see, like with the politics polarization, I mean, you pretty much locked in, like you have 40% vote going each way, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So, I mean, let's say even like 45 ish. I mean, that last 5% is where the challenge remains. And that's where I think Hillary, Trump, Biden, they were all fighting for that last 5% chunk of the vote because that decides the elections. I mean, I think I can pretty much say like 85 to 90% of the vote is pretty much locked in at this point.
Yeah.
We won't see
See,
any
now this is the
landslide.
sad part about us all being political animals, so to speak. That we all went on a tangent on American politics. So let's get back to Israel.
Yeah,
And
yeah. Sorry.
Kishore is like, मैं कहाँ आया था और ये मुझे कहाँ लेके चले गए. So,
But it's simpler than Indian politics, right?
oh God, I mean, Israel is not simpler than Indian
No.
politics.
I meant like US politics is simpler than Indian politics. So Kishore must be saying like they बच्चों की बात कर रहे हैं ये लोग.
Huh, absolutely no. Especially because Kishore comes from the Republic of Karnataka, where the politics has a whole new thing on its own, where you have where MLAs are bigger than the parties themselves, right?
Oh yeah,
Wait
if you
for
if
20.
you I know in
Sorry.
2018 they interviewed one guy and he said like, oh, I was with this party, and then few days later when they caught a hold of him, I forget his name. Kishore might know. Like he said, oh no, I never said I was going to vote for them. It was like during after the 2018 election. Like it was like this in 4 days. He said, oh, I never said I'm going to vote for that party, or that coalition. So
Oh, there are a bunch of MLAs like that, not
Yeah,
just one.
exactly. Sadly, us from our Republic of Gujarat, the MLAs are quite boring compared to the Karnataka MLAs that what I've heard. But who
Wait,
knows? We are going
wait,
into an election year next year. But back
yeah,
to back to Israel, Kishore. What do you think? So this is we've talked about a very global perspective, right? Israeli politics is notoriously insane for people who don't know what is going on because there the parties get seats based on the percentage of votes, and then you can
correct.
add your votes and get a higher percentage of seats, right? If
List,
I'm not
right?
mistaken.
List.
Yeah.
Yes, and along with that, what happened this time was one or two challengers to BB from within the Likud
Mm.
party actually came out. They formed their own parties.
Yeah.
Gideon Sar was one of them who actually bagged 6 seats in the Knesset.
Mm.
He called his party New Hope. So all of them are now ganging up against BB,
Mm.
and they are trying to do this experiment of unity government.
Mm.
So again, Labour is back. Meretz, which is also a left-wing party, they are back in power. Labour was out of power for a long, long time. So I think that way it was some kind of a welcome change for them.
Mm.
But now with Naftali Benett having to dance to the tunes of Labour, Meretz,
Mm.
then even
The
Yesh
Arab
Atid,
parties.
and the Arab parties, and one primarily Arab party called Ram. I think it'll be very, very difficult for Naftali Bennett to even run the show. Forget about
Yeah.
bringing in any policy changes when it comes to economy.
So
So I
let
think
me.
that is one major issue. But then the other point
Mm.
is again when it comes to national security.
Mm.
National security again. Even yesterday, BB came up with a statement telling it will be very difficult for Bennett to go ahead and put forth the Israeli cause in any
Mm.
international fora. And while I was joining this call here, I saw that um, BB was actually acting like Trump, like a sore loser, almost telling that this is fraud, electoral government, and electoral fraud that is being
Yeah.
done on the entire Israeli people. So I think it's kind of becoming too much even for BB right now. He
Yeah.
tried a last minute gasp wherein he said, okay, let me vacate the leadership of Likud if people like Gideon Sar can actually come back and we can form a primarily right wing government. So again, BB will continue to pull down this government even after it has taken oath.
Yeah.
So I think, and another thing that Israel is actually famous for, and we don't talk about it much, is actually poaching of these members of Knesset. That happens very regularly, and people from one party are actually poached by the other, and that is how infamously and notoriously governments are brought down.
So
So
they
I
don't
think
have anti-defection laws.
they don't have so that way I think we even if Naftali Bennett and Yair Lapid are successful in
Mm.
forming a government by themselves. I don't think they'll be looking
Yeah.
straight ahead. They'll always be looking at the rear view mirror trying to make sure that Bibi is not behind them.
Fascinating. Fascinating. I mean, this is IRM Gayaram taken to a global level, and
Oh,
for
absolutely.
for
I
for
mean, they also have a one seat majority, right? So even if one
yeah,
guy
yeah,
is
it is
indisposed
nothing.
due to medical conditions or God forbid passes away, they're still in again will be in trouble, right? So it's like a one seat majority is
It is insane. I mean, even if you had anti-defection laws like India. I mean, all you have to do is break a party of three and defect two third, which is
yeah.
like two out of three, which is not that hard. You
But
know,
Kishore, like so they have this proportional system. So is there a threshold? Like I know many countries they have a certain threshold that if you don't get certain
3.25.
amount of 3.25,
3.25. Yeah.
so if you get more than 3.25, less than 3.25, you don't get assigned seats.
You don't qualify to come in. Now 3.25 was for this election. It changes
mm.
every election.
Mm. Okay,
Oh,
interesting.
Now
interesting.
it changes every election simply because of the changing demographics and so on and so forth. But for this time it was 3.25. And yeah, if you are less than that, you don't come in. Now the point is every party should have given out a complete list of 120 potential members if
Mhm.
you win all 120.
Yeah.
Now and in that order, if you are eligible to win 36, the top 30 will become the members of the Knesset.
And
That's how
thank God
they're.
that's not in India. Otherwise, it would be all the top. leaders' sons and daughters and wives in the.
This is actually a weird amalgamation of India's Rajya Sabha elections and Lok Sabha, where in Rajya Sabha, if you don't get the numbers, your second option gets to, get elected. It's weird. So, but anyways, Israel's. I mean, we all hope for the best of Israel. I think Israel is a force that, like a country that must be, supported and strengthened, and it has great relations with India and US. So I just hope that this period of instability goes away and they find a leader, whoever they elect as a leader, because ultimately it's still a democracy. And
Yeah.
Democracies. What was that famous Churchillian quote? I'm aghast at quoting Winston Churchill, that democracy is the worst form of government apart from the others or something rest of else.
Yeah, something similar. Yeah.
I'll pull up the quote and tell, but yeah, I mean, I always am scared of quoting Churchill given his terrible record. Democracy is the worst form of government, except for everything else. and, and then he had another one, something. The best argument against democracy is a full 5-minute conversation with the average voter. So Winston Churchill's record is very questionable, but his quotes not so much. So except for when he talked about India, that racist fellow said a lot of nonsense. And look it up if you don't believe me about what he had to say about the Bengal famine and everything.
Bengal
But
famine. Yeah.
yeah. Anyways, moving on from Israel, if you guys have any last words to add, Mohal and Kishore, before we move on to the second and last part, which is Indian politics, and where we all have itching to go.
No, I think we will continue to hear about Israel even
Yeah.
after the government is formed, and BB will continue to be to be hogging the headline simply because he has a trial running, and there are about
Yeah, yeah.
300 witnesses to be examined. So I think that way we will continue to hear
As,
about
as, as, that,
Israel. And
as that Bollywood quote goes, "Picture abhi baki hai mere dost."
absolutely, absolutely, yeah. When you are talking about BB, you should never rule him out.
Never
That
do that.
man, that man has more lives than a cat.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I was about to say he's a person with 12 lives or something. But
Surely, surely, yeah.
Mohal, what do you make before we move to India?
Yeah, I mean, as I said before, I think it will be interesting to see how the geopolitical dynamics, especially with the Iranians, is going to play out. I mean, BB was there for a very long time, and also we had the Trump administration for the last 4 years, BB for 12 years. So, with new governments in both in Israel and in USA, it will be interesting to see how all these tensions play out, especially when. The some in the Biden administration want a softer line towards Iran. So how much leverage does Israel have to, let's say, covertly attack Iran, and how does it escalate, or who are the mediators?
Hmm.
That will be interesting to see in days to come.
Absolutely. Fascinating,
Oh,
fascinating.
by
Sorry.
the way, we actually have By the way, we actually have presidential elections coming up in Iran, and we had a TV debate yesterday, just for the record.
Goodness.
So,
I did.
yeah.
Who knows? I did not know that, and or I haven't followed that yet. So let's see what happens in Iran, because especially with the whole hacking situation and allegations, counter allegations, this is going to be very, very, very interesting. Moving to India, and this is going to be a short 10-15 minute discussion on the current situation in India. The COVID situation obviously is improving reasonably well. I mean, I say that as a perspective from the very bad situation we had 3-4 weeks ago. The vaccinated people in pure lump sum numbers, I think, is higher than the number of vaccinated people in America. Percentage wise, of course, we have a long way to go. So the hope is that they continue vaccinating at higher speeds, and the Covaxin and Covishield and other vaccination trials for kids also resume. So who knows, we might have some good news soon on that. But now I think we are back to political things over there. Arvind Kejriwal is doing his thing. Uddhav Thackeray is doing his thing. Mamata Banerjee can't make up her mind whether she has a bureaucrat or an advisor or something, because that whole chief secretary fiasco is playing out. So are we to say that now, once we are past the COVID situation, we are again in full-time politicking mode, guys?
I
Whoever
think
wants to
so.
go first.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think so. Simply because everybody is preparing for UP,
Hmm.
the big elephant. I think hardly 10, 11 months left. Uh, uh, we had a perfect situation for the opposition
Hmm.
when both Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath and the Deputy Chief Minister
Hmm.
Kishor Prasad Maurya were, I think, hospitalized because
Yeah.
of COVID when
Hmm.
both of them were tested positive.
Hmm.
And at that was the exact moment when UP fell off the cliff in terms
Hmm.
of the
Hmm.
COVID numbers, and the total situation
Yeah.
went from
And now
bad to
Yogi
worse.
seems to be getting it back.
Yes. So now what happened was Yogi ji went on a complete tour of the state. I
Hmm.
think he visited 27, 28 districts on the trot, not
Right.
going back to Lucknow. So I think that is the kind of bounce back effect that we are seeing in UP. Everybody understands how big this is going to be for every party. So
Hmm.
I think there were talk of not the leadership change in UP, but more of a cabinet reshuffle for the last 10, 11 months. But we don't know whether it will happen, but at least there are some rumors going on.
Hmm.
But again, Mayawati is busy disqualifying some of her MLAs. She had around 18, 19 to begin with.
Yeah.
She has already disqualified around 11, maybe. She
Ah.
hardly has some 7, 8, maybe plus or minus 1, 2
Yeah.
left in her party now. So I think that way everybody is trying to be very, very picky and uh,
So ironically, that when you said the UP was the elephant in the room, the party, the heart party of the elephant, BSP, which has the elephant as a symbol, is missing in action. It's like Mayawati's. I mean, I've been saying it for a while, and I think even Shekhar Gupta did a whole show on her.
right,
That
right.
how the Dalit politics is shifting. And again, I have a few disagreements with Shekhar here and there, but the thrust of it is Dalit politics is almost becoming more and more radicalized. And what Mayawati was 25 years ago, this Chandrasekhar fellow or others might be there. And Dalit politics also in India, I don't think is now national Dalit politics. I think we are at a point where it will take sub-regional identity of its own, where Dalit politics in Andhra Pradesh or Dalit politics in Karnataka or in Gujarat might take a whole different role, than one in UP. Also, I think they might be thinking Mayawati probably is too soft with the
Mhm.
current government. Could be because of the cases, or who knows what might be the reason. But and maybe they have. Maybe this is something that the government did not expect. Also, that the Mayawati's sort of hold to weaken. So because once her hold on Jatav's weakens, which is almost 15%, or in her case 20-25% of her vote, that is it. She's done. I mean,
Yes.
that is like BJP losing, 15% of their core vote across India. It's bad. So, what do you make of this, Mohal? Do you think this is the last election for Mayawati to prove a point? And if she cannot get more than 20 seats, she's finished?
I mean, you never say never in Indian politics, but yeah, I mean that. I mean, staying. She's been out of power. What now? 2000.
2012, 9 years.
She was 7, right, when she lost power.
No, no, 12. 7 is when she won. 2012 is when Akhilesh came back.
Yeah. So I mean, let's say if she doesn't win next year, then yeah, I mean she's staring at 15 years irrelevance. I think 15 is like probably the. I mean, more than 10 is obviously in the wilderness. Political wilderness is way too much. I mean, there always been complaints even after the last election that she's kind of bit aloof, and she doesn't connect with the ground workers, and she doesn't go out and meet, like like what Kishor just alluded to, like Yogi, like he went to all the districts and stuff. I mean, many political leaders are out of power. They do visit the leaders just to boost the morale on the ground and stuff. I mean, which I mean, you can't say of like maybe like Rahul Gandhi today, but like many other, like even like Indira Gandhi, when she was out of power in the late 70s, she did tour India and just try to boost the morale of the party. I mean, so this is something that Mayawati is not doing, and I think slowly the non-Jatav vote, the non-Jatav SC ST vote has drifted to the BJP. So I mean, it's a problem that unless she aligns with some party, I mean, maybe she could have tried to align with Congress last time around, but I mean, I don't think that would have made a dent. But at least would have given her a larger base to work with, because by herself she has no technical base right left. I mean,
Also, no, there is another thing. So when you talk about being 15 years out of power, Uddhav Thackeray is a classic example where Shiv Sena was out of power for 15 years, from 1999 to 2014, and then they went into a coalition with BJP, and then obviously now with in MV, Uddhav is in power for last 3 years, almost 2.5 years. But the difference is they were always in power in BMC, and BMC is probably, if not as probably half as powerful as the chief minister of Maharashtra if you control the BMC. Second, even though Uddhav and Shiv Sena were out of power there, they always had somewhere between 12 and 15 member of
yeah,
parliament.
they had a core vote base.
No, and they had 12 to 15 MPs. In the even in 2004 9, the lowest I think MP they had was like 11 or something like that. They have not gone, or maybe 10 MPs. I don't know the exact number, but they have not gone below that number. So even though you don't have the power there, you still have a bargaining chip. Mayawati, on the other hand, 2014 she was completely wiped out. 2019 she has a few MPs, I think 5 or 6 or something. I forget what is the final number. And even those are not like, one of them is that Kuwar Danish Ali fellow who's in JDS Karnataka, and then he was given the the seat to fight from in Mayawati's party. I noticed his post wishing Devegowda a happy birthday, and it was him and Devegowda, then him, Mayawati and Devegowda, and then him, and I'm like, ye kya ho raha hai, ye kaun si party mein hai? Right? So I mean, people like him. So it's not like these are core your Satish Chandra Mishra type people who are with Mayawati for the last 25-30 years, who have stayed there, and like a core of that. So Mayawati doesn't have the numbers at all. So
Yeah.
how does this pan out? So, Kishor, what do you think?
I think one thing that we need to keep in mind is after Yogi ji came to power, nobody missed either SP rule or the BSP rule. The only complaint anybody has had about the Yogi administration has been about law and order, and that's a double-edged sword. Some people like it, some people don't like it, and COVID, the way COVID was handled, especially in the second wave. So I think that way, unless and until somebody is really looking back to BSP rule and telling, what, those were the golden days and we need to bring that back, there is no way you have momentum on your side. And if that is not happening, then there is no way anything is going to click for you. I think that is a problem that Mayawati is having right now. The other problem is Mayawati has never been somebody who has been cribbing about a stepmotherly treatment for UP from the center. That is not the way she operates. Now, 2024 will be fought on that kind of a plank, wherein it will be more like a crowdsourced federalism, wherein everybody will tell the central government has shown us stepmotherly treatment. It can be Telangana, it can be Andhra, it can be even MP, for example, where people are kind of fed up of Shivraj Singh Chauhan getting orders from Delhi and just blindly following some of the instructions. So I think that way, that is some kind that is a rule book that Mayawati has never followed. So I think that is something where she will fall behind when compared to other people like, say, Mamata or Sharad Pawar or even a Kejriwal, for example.
I think
Sharad
our
Pawar,
best
Sharad,
scenario is,
Sharad Pawar is having interesting meetings these days. So never say never with Sharad Pawar.
no, I mean, see her, like, let's say if she wins, let's say 20 seats, for example, her only scenario for relevance is that, let's say BJP falls short by few seats, and then, like a Madhya Pradesh 2018 scenario where then Kamal Nath had to cobble up support from the SP, BSP, and the independents. So then she would play a queen maker in that case, that she could help SP, Congress, and all the rest of them to form a government. I'm not saying that's the situation on the ground today, but that's our only scenario, that if BJP doesn't have a majority, then SP, the way of that Mahagathbandhan sort of SP, Congress, BSP forming an alliance government. Otherwise, other than that, I mean, 20 seats gets you nothing. It doesn't even get you one Rajya Sabha
Also,
seat.
you need a future face, right? Mayawati doesn't have a face after her. If you're not in power, and if you don't have anyone after you, people are going to leave you. Long-term voters are not going to stand. So that is the situation. But when before we move to the last part, because we're talking about politics, how do you see the view of the role of Mamata Banerjee? Right, it's been a month after the results, and Mamata has already started taking on, very antagonistic. And I'm not even talking about the security issues that a lot of BJP cadre are facing and stuff. Wo to hai. I'm talking about a more antagonistic approach vis-a-vis the center for the next 2.5 years. Are we to suspect that that is what Mamata will do? What you were saying, cry out wolf every 5 minutes.
Yep. Did you people notice the hashtag Bengali Prime Minister or future Bengali, something like that? So I
Arey,
think,
no. This show, this Family Man has this lady called Basu. Seema Biswas plays like a lady called
right.
Basu, who's a Bengali prime minister shown clearly. But the thing is, here is my thing. She may have been an ode to Mamata Banerjee. She dresses up and conducts herself like Sushma Swaraj, as in like the sarees, the way she is dressed up. She's like Sushma Swaraj, always involved in global, sort of things or something.
Mhm.
Because Mamata Banerjee, when she was in the center, she was doing dharnas and being railway minister and whatnot. She was not. She did not have one-on-one connections and talks with the Sri Lankan prime minister and so forth. So
Right.
this is I think the liberal movie reviewers all collectively gasping, saying, "Oh, Mamta Didi is going to be our savior."
Okay, but the point I was trying to make was Mamta herself telling Khela Hobe in Delhi and not in Calcutta.
Ha
So I
ha
think
ha.
she kind of set the expectations for her supporters, for the middle of the ground voters, and she wants to be taken seriously as a pan India leader. But she has a long way to go. I don't think that can materialize as easily as she thinks it can be done. So yeah, I mean, she will
And
continue to play her cards well.
the thing
Let's.
is, some of the vitriol that some of her loyalists say on Twitter timelines against people who speak a lot of Hindis, people Gujaratis, people who are from Rajasthan. I mean, it is such vitriolic nonsense, that they spread. There was this guy, that Garga fellow or whoever, who was his,
Mhm.
who had to withdraw his comments after, when he said something. I mean, it is just rubbish. So if Mamta really wants to be taken seriously, I would like to go with her band of social media warriors led by Derek O'Brien and go to these other states which are not Bengal and try to say some of the nonsense that they speak on their Twitter timeline and see how many votes they get.
I mean, even when Sushant Singh Rajput was killed slash murdered, whatever you want to call it, and that actress was named and
Yeah.
shamed even without a trial, Mamta actually used that effectively
Yeah.
for her electoral
Hmm.
points.
Points.
Points. And what she did was she tried. She was very successful in calling it a Hindi versus Bengali kind of a dispute, wherein
Riya
everybody.
Chakrabarti, the name I remember now.
Yeah, but see,
Sorry.
Ria Chakrabarti.
Yeah,
Riya
right. So
Chakrabarti.
I think that's the kind of dangerous ploy that she is
So
playing.
she can do Hindi, Gujarati versus Bengali or whatever the hell to try and whip up some votes in some parts of Kolkata or something. And I'm not saying that everyone who voted for her voted because of that. I'm saying rhetoric happens in state elections, in national elections. It happens. It's happened in Gujarat also. It's happened in Karnataka also. It's happened in Tamil Nadu also. The language pride and so forth. But if you want to be a serious national politician, you cannot just alienate the rest of India and say whatever. So that perspective, I don't think Mamta is ready for that jump yet. I mean, she might want to think she is, but that would mean alienating some of her own supporters on social media who spout all sorts of nonsense. So
Especially,
sorry,
sorry,
sorry. No, finish your point
espe-
and then I'll go to Mohal. Yeah.
okay, especially when you are antagonizing the entire Hindi belt.
Exactly. So that is what I'm saying. I don't understand what is going on. Mohal, what is your take on this?
Yeah, so I mean, I know she did win the election, so she is in power for like 15 years, so she has higher aspirations of becoming prime minister. But as you rightly said, the her reach in other states is like doubtful. Like whether she can. I mean, the only course she could take is, let's say Congress says, okay, we don't want a prime ministerial candidate from our party, and we'll throw our weight behind a more unifying figure like Mamta. Then only it can, because like TMC has no presence in all other states. So if they start fighting, they will cut into the anti-BJP vote, and take out actually Congress candidates in most places. So unless the Congress throws a weight, it's a dead start. I mean, it's a dead start. Also, the other party to remember is that, let's say if people are not happy with the prime minister or BJP now, the thing is there are, I mean, as you like, you clap with two hands. So there has to be two things. Not only you have to be unhappy with the incumbent government, but you have to be very happy with the alternate choice. So if the alternate choice like Mamta like can put up this negative attack against prime minister, which is okay. I mean, every politician gets attacked, but what does she propose to do differently from Prime Minister Modi is also important, right? I mean, in 2019, we saw that Rahul Gandhi was constantly attacking Prime Minister with whatever like slogans and stuff. I'm not debating whether he was right or wrong. I mean, we all know the truth. But the thing is that what was his alternate vision for the country? I mean, there was no alternate vision. It was just like, okay, you can say like the prime minister or the incumbent government is bad, but unless you present an alternate vision, even though the you people might be unhappy with the incumbent, they're going to vote for the incumbent because they will say, okay, if you come, like how are you going to change my life on a day-to-day basis? So the thing is, she could, so there has to be a balance between like attack and present a new vision. Now if she just continues to attack, then she will end up in probably in the more like the Kejriwal category, like where in 2014 they lost deposits on like what 92 or 93% seats because they just had one thing, okay, we are going to attack Modi, but like there is no positive vision for the country. So there are a lot of these issues, and obviously the cross India support. So unless Congress props up a TMC candidate as a PM leader, I mean, it's a non-starter.
It's a nonsense. And yeah, it would be, of course, ironic Congress propping up a leader that split from its own party as a leader to take on BJP. So that's going to be very interesting. I don't think that's going to happen as well. The likelihood of someone from the heartland coming up is, as an alternative is more likely. But first of all, Congress will have to get rid of its obsession with Rahul Gandhi. So anyways, that's sort of our quick take on what is happening in the Indian political thing. But before we finish up and stuff, I have to go for our what is our tradition now, weekly recommendations. Who wants to go first, Mohal or Kishore?
I'll go first. So I mean, I know you just brought up like
Mohal had it ready. He's like, मैं बोलता हूँ पहले.
No, I mean, you mentioned it, and I was just watching it last night. I watched the first two episodes of the Family Man season 2. So it's I mean, I've just been, people say it's a must watch, so I'll recommend that, the Family Man. And you did bring it up just on the show like 15 minutes ago, right?
Yeah, absolutely. No,
Yeah, Manoj Bajpayee is a fantastic actor.
phenomenal. So I've actually watched more. I've watched about 6 episodes or 7 episodes of it, and it's quite gripping. I mean, obviously there is you have, when you watch thrillers, especially political thrillers, you have to keep your own beliefs and politics aside for a while, get immersed, and analyze what they have done. And it's interesting that route that the writers have taken. They've decided to paint characters grey and stuff. And I would recommend people to watch it and decide. Manoj Bajpayee interestingly gets his comic timing brilliantly in this.
Oh yeah,
this season. He's outstanding between comedy and tragedy, right? But even with the whole LTT, this is, I mean, if you've seen the trailer, this has the whole LTT sort of angle and stuff. And some of the political nuances that the writers take, I personally do not agree with them. But it is very, courageous on their part to actually take a subject that they related to and then take it apart with a very, sort of view. And also, we don't have India does not have thrillers with smart writing. There are very few, probably 5 or 6 good thrillers amongst 4 or 5 platforms that have smart writing. Like those bums that make Sacred Games forget that they are actually writing a TV show and not just a cuss word marathon where they just come and do cuss and fill the plot goes on its own, right?
Right, that way Madras Cafe was pretty good, right? I mean, it had the assassination of Rajiv Gandhi and the IPK
and I think they may have got the causations of the assassinations wrong, that they thought that Rajiv was coming to power, that's why they assassinate. I personally think it was more in retribution for what, like that's what a lot of commentators say, that retribution of what happened before rather than what was about to happen.
I think it's both. I think it's both combined. I mean, they were just worried that what would happen.
No, a lot of people do believe, and the assassination absolutely was tragic. But however, people believe that Congress, the amount of seats that Congress got after was probably as a sympathy wave due to the assassination. And Rajiv may have gotten a very significant majority. We don't know that, but may not have gotten the same number of seats that Narasimha Rao got. But I mean, regardless, it was a very tragic, thing what happened. But
Yeah,
Madras Cafe was a very good thriller by Shuji
yeah.
Sarkar. So there you go, two recommendations, and maybe we need to do a deep dive on LTT and how the politics is played on now. And I suspect more and more thrillers now to come on this perspective, because the LTT is no longer what it used to be. Of course, there might be sympathetic elements here and there, but after this war in 2008 2009, there it's changed quite a bit, the situation in Sri Lanka. And we might not know what comes out, because Channel 4 did some documentaries and there are multiple versions going on about what had happened. So we just hope that the truth comes out, and there are many more things that have made on this. So Kishore, your take on this.
Yeah, last episode when I was hearing you both, I remember Mohal asking anything other than Radhe, and this time, and this time I thought,
Kishore, are
okay,
you going to make Salman Khan's fans mad for 2 episodes in a row?
Ah,
no. Hear me out. I knew that this time both of you would anyway talk about Family Man, so I was thinking anything other than Family Man. So, so that was why I thought any of the Israeli-based shows that we have on the Red Sea resort, or Fauda,
Yeah.
or even Tehran that's come up,
Tehran, yeah.
any of those, or any of the books. One of them that I'm reading right now is the 6 Days of War by
Mhm.
Michael B. Oren. He was
Mhm.
actually an Israeli ambassador to the United States, and he
Hmm.
has written about the 6 Day War. So anything about Israel that would spike your interest
Yeah.
would be my
Hmm.
I
recommendation.
incidentally, I mean, after you recommended some time ago, I watched for the season one, so it was like interesting.
Hmm.
I mean,
Yeah.
once you start watching Fauda, you will find it
You
very hard
stopped
to
after
stop it in.
season one. I mean, that
No, no, no.
was.
I mean, I just managed to watch one like few days ago, so I have to watch two and three now. So
Here is what happens when we see.
I was about to ask him, were you watching on mute?
No, this is what happens when we watch Father, when new seasons of Father comes out. Both my TVs there is Father going on, because my dad is watching in one place and I'm watching on the other place, because it's just too hard to stop. I mean, it's brilliantly gripping.
Fauda is coming back for season 4 early next year.
And
okay.
no, and this guy, who's it? This Leo Raz is coming out with another show also, I think, for
Right.
HBO. So it'll be very fascinating. I don't know
So
for.
even the Red Sea Resort, I mean, I would like highly recommend that Kishore mentioned. Yeah, that
Oh,
was also a very good
there
movie.
is there is actually another show I do have, Mayor of Easttown with Kate Winslet on HBO. Outstanding thriller,
Yeah,
probably the best
I heard
thriller,
very good things about it. Yeah.
probably the best thriller I've seen this week. Or I mean, not this week, this year.
Is
I
it
think
on Prime or Netflix?
it's on HBO actually. Neither.
HBO. Okay, okay,
Yeah.
In India, it's on Disney Hotstar.
Ah, interesting. So
okay.
do watch it, people. So, anyways, fascinating, guys. I'm so glad you guys both could join. Maybe we need to do this
Mhm.
more often. We'll do this deep dive into LTT or and other issues as well. But thank you guys for joining in. Thank you everyone who has been tuning into us on YouTube and SoundCloud. Subscribe on the YouTube page and SoundCloud. यार हर हफ्ते मुझसे मत बोलो आओ. Like ठोक दो, subscribe लगा दो. It doesn't take too often. It doesn't take. It's not that easy, or not that hard. I meant to do this, but do it, and we'll be back with more next week. Till then, it's goodbye from all of us, and thank you for joining in.